What is crack-a-lackin', fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am a thoroughly disheveled Dan Favale, who is just very upset right now about a template that I made that wasn't working for Grant and I, joined by the certified fantabulous Grant Hughes, who is here. We are going to bounce around the league and talk about surprises or disappointments and basically play a game of real or not. Like, do we need to expect these disappointments to continue? Are these surprising teams, players, whatever, sustainable? Felt like a good time to do that. Now that we're about a quarter of the way through the regular season. I don't know if you noticed that, but
I know I keep waiting to get officially to the quarter, because then then you feel like some of these things are stabilizing and we can really, plus then you could do first quarter awards. We all want to do that, right? That's going to be fun.
I do wonder though if the increase in parity does make it less valuable to go through the first 20 games like it normally does, where there are just so many teams where, just using one as an example, it's like, okay, the Clippers are old and don't look great, but like they have these players, if stuff like starts flowing, like they're a team that could just surge, even like the Warriors. So I'm curious if there will be more middle.
Why in the first minute and 15 seconds do you have to bring up the Warriors after the worst loss of the season last night?
I'm sure we'll get to them with the news updates. Very quickly to everyone, just please remember to rate, review, subscribe. Apple, Spotify ratings help us a ton. Leave reviews on Apple. Even if you don't use them, it takes 5 seconds. Definitely subscribe on YouTube. Tell people about us if you've not already. I've been getting a lot of Instagram DMs and tags on Twitter about us being in people's Spotify podcast Wrapped screenshots. Those are really cool to see. So send them our way. Tag us in Discord. Join our Discord. The link to that's in the podcast and YouTube description. We really do appreciate all the support that we have gotten this year. It was a banner year in terms of downloads, and certainly this is the first year that like we really committed to YouTube. And so I think this will be the first 12-month period we ever did 1 million views on YouTube, which is so tiny compared to all these other podcasts that do it, but it's a big milestone for us. So we're super appreciative. And look, we're closing in on 4,000 subscribers. So we're a few hundred away from that. Go get us to 4K. Socials, they're on the screen, podcast, YouTube description. Grant, how the heck are you doing?
I'm shoveled because you were disheveled, and it made me wonder, has anyone ever described them? And what do you think shoveled means? Like put together? It feels like a compliment or feels like a positive.
It's too close to shoveled. And I don't really, if someone said I'm shoveled, I would think that they were drunk.
I was ready to shovel some dirt on the Warriors last night, if you want to use that term. What do you want to start with? You want to start with some news?
Yeah, let's get to news. Do you want to start us off and we'll alternate?
Sure. Again, alphabet. Is the alphabet thing, is it unfunny? Do we need to drop the alphabet bit?
No, did you see it in Discord? I think it was B Rich said, this podcast is going to be a banger or whatever because Grant started off with A in the alphabet. So I think our listeners appreciate, we're just admitting that, yeah, there's human error, but there's an element of us where if we overthink it, we just become inept and we jump teams in the middle of the alphabet. It happens, I feel like, once every other like conference episode where we're trying to go through all these teams. I'll fuck up the alphabet.
I think probably if we leave it alone, if we don't continue to make it a bit, that's when we'll mess it up and then not acknowledge it. And that would be the worst thing, is if we just go right from like Atlanta to like Charlotte or something and just forget B as a letter. Okay, so Atlanta.
It'd be worse if you skip the C's or the D's just because there are a bunch of teams with those, or the M's. If you just went, that'd be the worst. That'd be probably the most egregious, where you just go from the Lakers and it's like, all right, the New Orleans Pelicans.
I've done so many, and you are in the exact same boat. So many 30 sliders that like it's alphabetically naming every team in a row is just like, it happens without my brain even acknowledging that it's happening. Just as long as I get started and get on a run.
Do you know how I practice it out by whenever we do these every team exercises, I won't copy and like I have a list of teams on so many different, like we have our master spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I type them out. Like I go Atlanta all the way through Washington just to like condition myself to know, okay, like that's the order. It does get tough. This is now a full-on bit. Maybe people are gonna be tired of it now. When we're splitting it by conference,
yeah, right.
It's like if I don't separate them in the doc that I'm looking at in my notes. And so it's like if you have to kind of calculate that where it's, oh no, we're not going to Dallas. We got to go to Detroit.
Right.
Like you skip over Dallas and Denver because we're doing the East.
But if you have the East, you have like the first 6 teams in a row alphabetically, because you don't get to a West team until Dallas.
And speaking of that, this is tangentially related, I promise. Whenever we do those East-West stuff, or even if we focus on like a cluster of any, I'll just put it this way, any hook on YouTube that has anything to do with the Western Conference always thoroughly outperforms the Eastern Conference one. I guess it has to do with our following. I don't understand it necessarily. So you must be the driver of this podcast, really, because I live on the East Coast and those are the pods that get no attention. And then the West one is just pop off.
Yeah. Well, this is where you should live if you could pick anywhere. I'm just,
hey, look, time zone, your weather is better than where I live. I'll take it.
The only place you could top it is Hawaii, because then your late games start at like 4:00 or whatever. It's perfect. Or even earlier. Anyway, Atlanta Hawks, let's do it. The Hawks announced Sunday that Jalen Johnson underwent an X-ray on Saturday night and an MRI on Sunday morning. He's been diagnosed with a left distal radius fracture. What I saw was that he will not require surgery. So that's a positive. He's going to be reevaluated in 3 to 4 weeks. That's a big loss for the Hawks because he does a ton of stuff athletically that they just don't get from other guys that can play that position. Yeah,
and you mentioned quarter season awards. I haven't thought about it, but he has to be in the running for most improved player.
For sure.
At the moment. The Celtics coach Joe Mazzulla said Sunday that Kristaps Porzingis and his calf injury will be reevaluated after about a week or so.
Brooklyn Nets Cam Thomas is expected to be back from an ankle injury on Thursday. The Nets also announced on November 22nd that Ben Simmons, who has a back injury that has a much longer, more complicated name, I think they've called it, has begun light individual work, and he's going to be reevaluated in 7 to 10 days. So end of this month, probably. So coming up fairly soon. That's according to Adam Zagoria of zagsblog.com.
On to the Bulls. I had the wrong Hornets update in there for some reason. But so for the Hornets, this is a big one. So I don't really know how I ended up missing that. LaMelo Ball, I don't even know what the exact injury is, but he's going to miss a ton of time. Let me look and see if I can find it. Likely to miss extended time with his ankle sprain per report. There's no exact timeline, but it is the same ankle that he had surgically repaired. He did avoid a fracture. That was per Shams. But when you're dealing with the same ankle injury, and I saw people kind of floating around, at what point do we start to have longer term questions about his viability? The thing I will say, he's been good for the most part when he is healthy. And we had these same questions about Steph Curry earlier in his career, and that turned out all right. LaMelo Ball is not Steph Curry, but we don't need to be, I know it's been 4 years, almost 4 years now he's been in the league. At the same time, still a kid in his early 20s. Let's not, jump the shark here.
Yeah. The Chicago Bulls, they are focused, thank God we're getting this now, on trading Zach LaVine, and have told other teams they won't even deal anybody else until they know what they're going to get for LaVine. That's according to Casey Johnson of NBC Chicago. Better 3 years late than never, I guess, to start the teardown.
That's a stupid logic, though, by the way, right?
Isn't it? I bumped on that too, but I didn't have a strong opinion on whether that made sense. What do you think? Why do you think it's bad logic to wait until you know what you're going to get for LaVine before you move down the ranks to like whatever DeRozan, Caruso, Vooch?
Isn't the whole idea of running an NBA team, hey, we can multitask?
Well,
and if you wanted to get to a position where it's, well, let's see what we get for the LaVine return, maybe you shop LaVine when other teams are actively engaged on the trade market, where right now, we're getting closer to December 15th, but that's sort of this just unofficial benchmark. And I think the chaos and parity of this season is going to have more teams than normal, maybe waiting, especially if you're, there are going to be teams. Yeah, I'm sure there's teams ready to buy, but there are probably people that are kind of just waiting like, oh, LaVine's available, but could Toronto still blow it up? And the answer is just, I think it's no at this point, but could they be waiting on Toronto? Are they like, could something go wrong with the Clippers and Paul George just decides that he wants a trade? And so if you wanted to wait to see what the LaVine return was, then you should have done this over the offseason rather than waiting until you were 11 games in the season to acknowledge, oh, fuck, like something's not right here.
Let me try this on you. I just thought of it. What if the reasoning behind like, well, we're going to see what the packages are for LaVine before we do anything else is LaVine is probably the squeakiest wheel among the guys that are angling to get out of Chicago, because there's just been more reports than about him being upset or disgruntled than anybody else. And they're kind of thinking this almost feels like a half measure. Like, let's just get rid of him before we consider trading anybody else. And maybe this would be very Bulls thinking of like, maybe that'll solve the problem because everything else is great. We just got to get rid of Zach LaVine and then we don't have to blow it up. We'll just go forward with what we have. What if that's
honestly, if that's the path they're taking, they should just bench Nikola Vucevic and then they can play super small and roll out Andre Drummond. And so I don't think they're thinking in those terms. This might just be a leverage thing, but the framing, even if it is a leverage thing, to me, I think is dumb.
Fair.
It's on to me, and we're on to the Mavericks. Maxi Kleber has not played since November 8th and remains out with a dislocated right toe. He's not listed as out indefinitely, but just something to monitor there. He's dealt with so many injuries over the past few years. We already covered Mark Cuban selling his majority stake in the team. So go listen to that Mailbag podcast where I covered it. But he reportedly did not sell the majority stake to run for president. I can't believe that's a thing that I need to say. So he's not leaving Shark Tank at the end of next year and selling his majority stake in the Mavs so that he can run for president. What he actually did is he took less than he could have gotten because the Mavs were valuated technically higher than the $3.5 billion, which I did clarify on that podcast, but people were reporting that he made $3.5 billion. No, he sold a share of a $3.5 billion valuation. That valuation could have been higher, but he elected to take less so that he could remain in charge of the team. I don't think anything like this has ever happened in the NBA, as far as I know. So I'm interested to see how it plays out, because if you're going to drop billions of dollars, like this is still, let's just say it's a 50-50 split or 51-50, that's still going to run $1.8 billion or whatever. At some point, you're going to want to say on how the team is being run, I would assume. But the whole casino ties there and how much of an advocate Mark Cuban has been for getting casino gambling, sports gambling into Texas, unsuccessfully, obviously. The fact that it was sold to someone so embedded with the Las Vegas Sands Corporation, just some interesting stuff to monitor over the next few years, I think.
It seems very much like, and this has to have been reported or at least like alluded to, now with the new ownership group coming in, or, joining Cuban, I guess, like, you can dangle a brand new arena with like tons of, casino complexes around it as part of hey, Texas, can we legalize gambling here? We're going to privately fund this like multi-billion-dollar project, create all these jobs, create all this revenue. You think you want to maybe rethink the, gambling legality here so we can just, rake in tons of money for everybody involved? Like that seems like it's not even the cynical take. It's just like, that's what's happening. It feels like. I have the Detroit Pistons next. Mark Stein reported back on November 21st that Monte Morris will be reevaluated in 6 to 8 weeks. Why not just wait longer? Following additional treatment to address his ongoing quad strain. Bojan Bogdanovic calf is expected to make his season debut soon. The Pistons stay losing.
In a banner moment for the alphabet, I had the Nuggets listed after the Pistons on our doc.
We did it.
Nikola Jokic is playing through back issues, and he did miss Tuesday's game. Jamal Murray, who's not played since November 4th, returned to the Rockets on Wednesday night, a game that I believe is unfolding as we record this podcast.
Okay, here we go. Golden State Warriors. This isn't in the news, Doc. I'm just gonna just extemporaneously discuss how they blew a 24-point lead and became the first team in like 10 years to allow a team to shoot 40 free throws and turn it over 20 times. Just atrocious, awful loss to the Kings. During which Gary Payton II suffered a right calf injury. He's going to be out indefinitely. Chris Paul also left with what they're calling a left leg injury. We don't have any more information on what that is or how long he's going to be out, but given his age, given his history with like muscle strain injuries and how often those can recur, that might be a while as well. Also, just to pile on the great news, members of the organization, according to I think it was a Kendra Andrews report, were frustrated with Andrew Wiggins for basically not coming into this season in shape. So everything is super great for the Warriors right now. And nobody on Twitter is calling for Steve Kerr to be fired or the core to be blown up or just, canceling the rest of the season. That's definitely not happening.
There was also the report, I didn't include this in there, that they're interested in bringing Chris Paul back next year at a discounted number. So go figure that they don't want to pay his, what is he guaranteed, or his non-guarantee of 25 million, 30 million, whatever it is. So go figure. The Houston Rockets, we're back on the good alphabet train. Amen Thompson, who's been out with a right ankle injury since November 1st, was able to take part in non-contact drills during practice this past weekend, but he's yet to be cleared as of now for contact or scrimmage work. That came per Jonathan Fagan of the Houston Chronicle.
SI.com's Tony East reports that Pacers forward/center Jalen Smith is going to miss at least the next 2 games with left heel and left knee injuries.
For the Lakers, there's old notes in here that I didn't delete when I apologize for not proofreading this, Grant. Rui Hachimura underwent a procedure on Friday to repair a nasal fracture, and he'll be reevaluated in 1 week, which we are coming up on. That comes per Mike Trudell of Spectrum Sportsnet.
For the Memphis Grizzlies, Marcus Smart spotted during Wednesday's shoot-around without a boot on his injured left foot. That's per DeMichael Cole of the Memphis Commercial. He has not played since November 4th. Additionally, for the Grizzlies, Jake LaRavia is going to undergo a procedure, was set to undergo a procedure about a week ago on November 21st to address a corneal abrasion in his left eye. Sounds fun, and is going to be reevaluated in 2 to 3 weeks. Luke Kennard, also, who's been out since November 14th, has about another week to go before he's going to get reevaluated for a bone bruise in his left knee.
Tyler Hero, who's been dealing with a left ankle injury and hasn't played since November 8th, is apparently at least 1 week away from returning to Miami's lineup.
Jaden McDaniels with a sprained right ankle has been out since the 20th. He's at least 1 to 2 weeks away from being reevaluated. So that always, you don't know what that reevaluation is going to show. Could be some more time after that. Anthony Edwards left the Wolves win over the Thunder on Tuesday, which was a great game. He had a nasty fall right on his right hip. It's right hip contusion. He's not expected to play Thursday. Unclear on the full timeline. When he went down, I don't know if you saw it, but man, it was just, he was way up there, got kind of undercut, and just right smack on that hip pointer. He was going through it for sure. That one, I thought when he did it was going to be a big deal.
I was surprised because I watched that game too. I was surprised that they didn't call a timeout earlier or commit a foul to get him off the court after he hit his free throws. That surprised me.
He was hurting.
The Pelicans, after more than 3 weeks on the sidelines due to a collapsed lung, CJ McCollum returned to the Pelicans on Wednesday versus the Sixers. Despite speculation from fans, not really reporters, that he might come off the bench, he was in the starting lineup. Trey Murphy, still dealing with that left knee stuff, has been upgraded to doubtful on the Pelicans injury report. He's yet to play this season. And Matt Ryan, who's dealing with a right calf strain, hasn't played since November 18th. He could return soon.
Update on the Josh Giddey situation, which is ongoing for the Oklahoma City Thunder. The family of the alleged underage girl with whom he also allegedly had an inappropriate relationship. A lot of alleging happening, just to make sure we're covering our bases. The family's not cooperating with the Newport police investigation as of now. So may not hear a whole lot more about this with any kind of definitive information for a while.
Hopefully we get the results, but we really all, myself included, because I probably spent too much time on it, just need to withhold the actual opinionated commentary until we have any facts whatsoever.
Yeah, this is me quietly nodding and not opining any further.
For the Orlando Magic, Markelle Fultz is now day-to-day with his left knee tendonitis. He has not played since November 9th. Wendell Carter Jr., who has been sidelined since November 2nd with a fractured third metacarpal of his left hand, had his cast removed and could be ready to play in 2 weeks. He called that, by the way, the best day of his life when he had the cast removed.
Wow.
Shout out to Wendell Carter Jr. Jonathan Isaac has missed the past 2 games with a sore left ankle and remains day-to-day.
Everybody sit down for a second. Phoenix Suns, Bradley Beal, who's been dealing with a lower back strain, is at least 1 week away from being reevaluated. This is dragging for quite some time in ways that should concern the Suns, although they have done just fine with their 2 stars for the most part.
Those are the 2 stars we talked about that they can't lose. Booker and Durant give them a chance. For the Blazers, Anthony Simons, who has appeared in just 1 game and had right thumb surgery, he had the splint/cast removed on November 19th. He has resumed on-court work. I still have not found anything about the specific timeline for his return.
Keegan Murray has been out since November 20th with a lower back injury. He is at least practicing again, so that's a positive.
Something to monitor in Utah. Larry Markkinen experienced left hamstring soreness during practice on November 24th. So he technically hasn't played since November 20th. I think was their last game before that. He's not expected to return while they're on their current road trip, which means that the earliest he will come back is against the Blazers on Saturday, December 2nd.
Wrapping up here for the Wizards, DeLon Wright.
Oh, you can skip this. That's an old note. I apologize.
Is it? Okay. He's
really
still out for 4 to 6 weeks.
Actually, so we did that like 2 weeks ago. DeLon Wright should be like 2 to 4 weeks away from returning. How about
That's all. That's good. You just healed DeLon Wright by 2 weeks. Good job.
I apologize for leaving so many odds and ends to give this. Putting these things together is actually tedious and annoying, but I think it's important. So, all right, this is your show for the most part.
Man. All right. So I never knew. I don't know if I arrived at anything. What did you suggest? Real or nah? As a
Sustainable or not, but
sustainable or
sustainable.
not.
You don't want to call that for disappointments. Is this shitty show sustainable? This podcast?
Really,
yeah, definitely.
For me, what it is kind of like so what's up with, and then insert team, whether, and it might not be, it's just really more, it's kind of a personal thing, I guess. Cause there's just, how there's just teams where you just don't have a feel yet, or maybe you're not really sure. There are some sustainability questions with a lot of these, and, the real or not, I think does apply, but they're really just teams that I don't know. I wanted to kind of kick back and forth with you to see if we can, I don't know, help crystallize like what we ought to be thinking about these teams. And the first of those is the Orlando Magic. And this will happen in a couple of cases. I put most of these stats together yesterday. So the Magic have since throttled the Wizards. Surprise, surprise, 139 to 120.
I will say it looked touch and go at the beginning.
It did. I watched the first half of that game and I was ready to just start downgrading everything I was going to talk about. And then they scored 139 points. I'm not going to look. I assume that's a season high by a comfortable margin, but the Wizards will do that to you. And it's kind of like, I guess I'm not going to lean too hard on that 139 because most of my questions are about Orlando's offense. So they're now 13-5. Their net rating was plus 6.2 as of yesterday. It's significantly higher than that. They were 16th in offense, second in defense, just to get like sort of a baseline. I don't know if Cleaning Glass probably hasn't updated with that game, but rest assured that their offensive rating, I'm sure, is better than 16th now. I'm going to refresh real quick and just double check and see if that has changed. They are up to 13th in offense and they are 4th in defense now. Plus 6.8 is their net. 13-5 is a new record. So when Wendell Carter, we mentioned Wendell Carter's got the cast off. When he went down, I thought, and I think maybe conventional wisdom was that, well, defensively now there's big trouble. And this is a team that even, based on last year was going to hang its hat on defense. Nobody thought Goga Bitadze was going to, be adequate. Jonathan Isaac could not be relied upon. Mo Wagner, a nice like 12th guy, but he's not going to do much. And then what's happened is they've gone 10-3 now and have won 8 straight. There are some pushover wins in that run, but they've beaten the Lakers, they've beaten the Bucks, Denver, Boston. So there's some good wins in there. As of yesterday, 4 of the top 5 guys in plus minus during this run are bench players. So it's not like, oh, Paolo was just player of the week in the East, but it's not just him and Franz Wagner being great. It's like Gary Harris is positive, Joe Ingles is positive, Karl-Anthony, Isaac, all these guys. So now as a result of all this, do you remember what their preseason over-under was and where you were on it? I can tell you.
I bet you it was probably 33.5, and I took the under.
It was 37.5, which you did go under. I went over. I said 38, and now they're projected for like a mid-40s win total. This is going by ESPN's BPI, which is like, that validates people that thought Orlando was going to be kind of like OKC East, be the young team that really like rises up and is now just a playoff team, more than it does people like me. And I guess you're joining me here that thought marginal improvement was coming, but not necessarily anything great. I guess I have a bunch of stats here. Most of them are really positive towards the defense being legit. I'm just curious, like based on what you've watched or any numbers you've come across, would you start to skew more towards Orlando's like maybe even better than a play-in team? Because they've won 13 out of 18 games right now. Like those wins are banked. So you can play 500 ball and your 8 games, your 8 games on the good side of 500. Have you changed your opinion? Do you have questions about them? Like, is there any, if you're curious, I have a lot of numbers we can go through, but I just want to know where you're at before I kind of continue.
I think they're closer to a top 6 team in the East overall than not, or that they're more than a play-in team and certainly not a lottery team. A big part, maybe I'm reading too much, like the offense has been pretty good over this stretch. They're 10th in first chance half-court offense, which is a big deal. However, and you sort of alluded to this, when you start to dig into what their best lineups have been and you sense it when you're watching them, their best offensive units are usually just a bunch of bench guys that are on the floor. And so, yeah, like Paolo might be in there or Franz might be in there, but it's Karl-Anthony sort of driving that ship. They're winning, minutes where Mo Wagner or Goga Batadze is going to be in there. That's fine to get through the regular season. I worry, what do your top end units look like in the playoffs? And maybe it doesn't matter that much. I mean, so for instance, their preferred, what I would think would be their closing lineup at this juncture, if everyone were healthy, Fultz, Suggs, Wagner, Franz Wagner, if anyone was wondering about the confusion, Paolo and Wendell Carter Jr. They barely play together this season. They have a plus 13 net rating, though, and it's all because of what they're able to do on defense. And so you can put your top end guys on the court and say, yeah, we'll win these important minutes against other teams as best players. But if you need buckets, if you get to a point where you need to open up the floor in the half court, and I'm not talking about, look, the Magic do, if you watch them, they do a pretty good job of spacing the floor around the drives of Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. However, defenses don't give a fuck still. They are going to crowd those. And so I don't think you necessarily need someone who's going to hit shots off the dribble, but they could really use another shooter. And I don't think it's a cliche to talk about, but like that is the missing element to this team. It's, maybe it changes when you have everyone who's healthy and if Jalen Suggs is going to hit a bunch of threes and you have Wendell Carter Jr. kind of stretching the floor from the 5 spot, but defenses just aren't, for the rest of the season, aren't going to care. And so during the regular season, I don't think it matters. Like if you told me right now, the Magic finish that it's okay, there's Milwaukee, there's Boston, there's Philly, and then the Magic are 4th in the standings, I'll believe it. Their playoff stock still concerns me unless they figure out a way to effectively open up the floor, I'll say, in those high leverage minutes.
Yeah, to that point, you're absolutely right. Like the look of the offense.
Don't seem so shocked.
No,
it's like, holy shit, I agree.
No. Well, it's just like, as I'm looking at my numbers, what you're saying is like, you could not have provided a better sort of like segue into them, because the Magic going into tonight's game anyway. I'm sure it's better now because they played the Wizards. They're number 1 in rim attempt frequency. They are number 1 in location-based effective field goal percentage, but they're 22nd in actual field goal percentage, effective field goal percentage. So that's just like, and it's because they don't make threes and they don't shoot them. And it's because they don't have 3-point shooters. Like Jalen Suggs came into tonight at 36%. He was 3 of 6. So he's nudging up towards like the high 30s, which if Jalen Suggs is like a moderate volume, 38, 39% 3-point shooter, that changes a ton. It doesn't mean he can run a pick and roll. It doesn't mean he's going to break down his guy individually and create shots for other people, but he's a hellacious defensive guard
he's all defense for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Even with getting rid of positions, he's on, I don't know if he's first team. That would be something like right now he's been one of the 10 best defenders in basketball this season.
Can't have the best defensive guard in basketball conversation without getting to him like in pretty short order. And so, and the Magic are number 1 in forcing turnovers. Like he is very much a part of that.
But yeah, the stuff he does, I mean, on the ball too, but away from the ball, he's a menace and a half.
He's awesome. He's awesome at what he does. If he is a legit 3-point shooter, and it's like his track record is what it is. It's just awful. And so like, we can't say this is the new normal, but if he's improved enough, then you don't because if he's not, then what you're talking about is like, you kind of have to make a decision, and it's going to necessarily mean your defense will get worse to bring in the type of shooter or offensive player you're talking about. And you hate to take away from what's been such a strength so far, unless you really have to. Now, like the other upgrade is like right now they're starting Anthony Black, who just like barely looks at the basket, he's like no defense cares if he's open. And Markelle Fultz is kind of the same way, except like he can be on the ball a little more. So it's a little different, but like the Magic just do so much right. Like they get really good shots. They are number 3 in free throw rate coming into tonight. Like the offense like has the bones of something that will work. They just don't have the pieces that will cash in on the good shots they're creating. So anyway, like to answer my question to you is I'm much more bullish on the idea that this is like a mid to high 40s or maybe more win team in the regular season. But like you could almost not draw up a worse or like a simpler playoff matchup for a team to attack, where it's just like, we don't let Franz and Paolo score. We pack the lane, and just if Jalen Suggs and Markelle Fultz and whoever else are going to beat us from 3, great. And they just, the game plan is already done for whoever plays the Magic unless they change the roster. But yeah, I think like you also assume that you get Wendell Carter back. Like, by the way, he's been a decent spacer at center, so maybe that helps too. And the defense is at least as good. because you're going to get regression from guys like Mo Wagner's like 70% true shooting, and it's just like suddenly incredible, like in the 6th man of the year conversation. Goga Bitadze is not going to stay this good. You might say Suggs is a little over his head. Maybe Carter coming back offsets that. But yeah, this team is like, they're on like a high 50s win pace right now. So if they could find any kind of offense, pretty exciting for them.
And I think what has changed, and like to your point, by the way, just about the shooting, having Franz Wagner lead your team in 3-point attempts per game at 5.2 is just, that's like, you need a higher volume guy. And there is right now among their rotation players, they have one dude, and that's Gary Harris, who is averaging more than 7 attempts per 36 minutes. And like the fact that Jonathan Isaac is second among their everyday rotation players in 3-point attempts per 36 minutes is just weird. And like, I don't know how else to frame that. I know it's because he doesn't play a ton, like he's in his small stints. I did mention them as a potential Zach LaVine destination. Magic fans don't like that. I understand why they don't like that. I might still, depending on the cost, if it's just salary and picks, I'm taking a look. But I do think their success has changed the context of what they need, where it's, I don't think Buddy Hield becomes available at this point, given how iffy Benedict Mathurin has been and the Pacers are trying to win. But it could be like, does Tim Hardaway Jr. become available? What about AJ Griffin in Atlanta? Are they ready to sell medium on him? That might be someone who could help them a little bit. I keep thinking back to how much, like, this team might be the 2nd best team in the East right now if they had been the squad that got Max Strus instead of Cleveland. Would have been that's a pointless what if, because it's just, they're not going to get him. If the Grizzlies go off the rails, Luke Kennard on this team, that could be super interesting. I don't know who else could really become available. Like, they just need sort of a caps lock shooter. It doesn't need to be someone who operates a ton on the ball. It just needs to be someone who defenses will guard in the half court in their most important minutes. And so that's kind of a big ask, but it's a lot different than saying, you look at some of these other teams and they need a secondary, like, off the dribble scorer. Right. And the Magic, because you have Franz, because you have Paolo Banchero, and because you have Markelle Fultz, and even just Jalen Suggs doing some stuff when the floor is actually open, and even you can run things through Wendell Carter Jr., they don't need that player anymore to me. It's they need the Buddy Hield who becomes available, because I don't think it's going to be Buddy Hield.
Or just like, what if you had, he's not available, but literally anyone could have had him. What if you had Isaiah Joe? Just like someone that is out there to just, if you're open, he's going to get up, 10, 12 threes per 36, and they're all good shots by definition because he's shooting. Just someone like that. You don't even need to be an ace defender. You can, it seems like it should be fairly easy to go find, because you're not looking for a fully rounded out player. You just need a guy who's going to, like, not get crushed on defense and take and make a bunch of threes. Like that's a niche guy.
I do wonder if they're positionally, this could be tough, but like Doug McDermott could be it. Like, I'm just trying to float names that are just gettable and won't cost you a ton here. Like, there's just no one else is really springing to mind. I'm like, preferably they need to kind of come in like the wing format, or at least someone who doesn't infringe upon minutes that you're going to give to your Wendell Carter Jr. and Paolo. And so, there are some players like Doug McDermott is better off at the 4. If you're going to play Franz, Paolo, and Wendell Carter Jr. together, like, does Doug McDermott, can he see time in that lineup? And I don't know if you want it to come, like, I mean, maybe if he's hitting enough of his threes, like if Tyus Jones became available, defenses will guard him a little bit more than they will a Fultz or an Anthony Black, but like, I don't know if that's enough. But it just feels like it could be like maybe even would a Royce O'Neal or a Dorian Finney-Smith do it for them? I don't know if the volume's necessarily enough, but like, that's I beat it to death. Like, that's the kind of level of player they need, I think, to really turn a corner, rather than they need a star or primary or secondary creator.
Yeah. All right. You want to talk Pelicans? I feel like I'm stepping onto your corner by bringing up the Pelicans, but they are a team that I want to know what's up with them.
Rome 8180 is mad at me for I was on the verge of just deboarding the bandwagon, and I stayed on, and then they turned a corner, and he said, ever since Dan announced that he was staying on the Pelicans bandwagon, it's just, they're losing to the Jazz. It just, nothing looks right.
Twice, right? Did they lose the Jazz twice? Did I imagine?
Yeah, both times without Lauri Markkanen, I think.
Yeah, I think so. So
I'll double check that, but yeah, that's not.
They beat the Sixers tonight by 10, but Joel Embiid didn't play. I'll update some of their numbers. The Pelicans are 10-9 now, minus 0.5 net rating, 18th in offense, 13th in defense. Nothing like, spectacular coming out there. and they've had their injuries. Like Trey Murphy, we went through them already on the newser, but like Trey Murphy hasn't played yet. McCollum just now is getting back. Najee Marshall missed some time. Jose Alvarado, I think, has played 4 or 5 games. So, there's like, Murphy, I think in particular, everybody had him pegged as a most improved guy. And I think his shooting and his defense and athleticism would be a perfect complement. So not totally fair to evaluate them, but injuries have long been a part of New Orleans' whole story. And that's what is most interesting to me is like the injuries that we worry the most about to Zion and Ingram, like haven't really happened. Right. Mm-hmm. So in theory, in some sense, at least, the best case scenario has taken place. Like both of those guys have been available for, the vast majority of the season, and you're still roughly a 500 team. You've gotten outscored on the year. And so I just kind of wanted to dig into like, well, they have those guys. And the whole theory was if you have Zion and Ingram, or at least Zion, really, like your offense is great. And this team is capable of getting right back to where it was when it was at its best. Some red flags have arisen for me. And a lot of this is going to be made to look ridiculous because because a lot of it's going to be on how Zion, the career low for field goal percentage, percentage of field goal attempts at the rim used to be 75% for him. And now he's at 64%. So he's just not getting to the rim as much. He was 10 of 10 in the restricted area tonight against the Embiidless Sixers. So like, I don't know what that's going to do to the numbers, but it will improve them. But the problem is he's replaced a lot of that stuff generally this season with like mid-rangers. He's passing a little more out on drives. That's helpful. His assist rate has never been higher in his career. The problem though is like just anecdotally, he looks less explosive. I know I've mentioned that, and I think you were correct to note that like, well, he's coming off, basically a lost season. Like, let's take a break on that. I just think if Zion is not like maximally explosive attacking the basket, it's just not the same thing. Like his dunks are down. I had a stat there. I can't find it now, but his free throw rate's never been lower. True shooting's never been lower. Again, this ridiculous 11 of 12 night he had tonight might change some of that. His rebounding has never been worse. His average shot distance has never been farther from the basket. All these things are just indicators of like limited or like declining athleticism, or his athleticism hasn't like returned. I don't know. The theory of the Pelicans depends so heavily on Zion being like this, 60% on twos and unstoppable, getting to the line all the time, spurring a transition attack. Like none of that's really happened. And so it just changes the way I think about New Orleans, because the good thing has basically taken place, which is he's been healthy, and they're kind of just not that great. So I have a harder time saying, well, all these other injuries, once these guys are back, maybe it clears space for Zion. Maybe the dunks come back. Maybe the downhill drives, are just more effective with more room because Trey Murphy is on the perimeter. I don't know. It's just, I've never been as high on the Pelicans as some people have. And I guess like the thing I was worried about was Zion's never going to be healthy, and he's been healthy, and yet I'm still kind of cold. So that's a lot for you to unpack, but like, I just think the theory of this team now has changed, and I'm less optimistic about it in general for that reason.
That's interesting. So and I went into this a little bit on the mailbag because we had a question about his drives. The spacing can be so bad at points, I think, because even when you have shooters on the floor, defenses are so just obsessed with Zion Williamson, and sometimes it doesn't matter. But I've wondered if the amount of bodies being thrown at him has impacted his volume at the rim, has impacted his rebounding, just having more bodies on him, or teams playing him more physically. And then also when you look at his drives, his assist rate has never been high enough on drives, even when his pass rate is high enough on drives. And that's sort of the case again this year. And if he had more open space to work with, would he be better at finding his teammates? Would he be able to get to the rim even more easily for him? We've seen instances where it just doesn't matter, but it's got to take a toll on your body if you have to go through 2, 3, 4 guys just to get a semi-contested look at the basket, where maybe you don't get an N1. Because I think, there are players where it's just difficult. I don't want to excuse what people might think is poor officiating. I think some players are just hard to referee. He's one of them because of the way that he is just built. And the fact that their first chance offense has been, it's been better over this stretch. I think they're 10th in first chance offense since November 14th, during which time their How many games have they won? Were they like 7, and how many games have they won during that stretch? They are
They're 10-9 now.
6-3 over their last 9 games. So since that like November 14th stretch, so they're 10th in first chance offense, but they're just not doing a ton with their first chance offense, like overall, when you're looking at the efficiency of it. And like, does the spacing improve as you get CJ McCollum back, as you get Matt Ryan back, as Trey Murphy III comes back? Those feel sort of like flashbulb developments for them, because it's not about, if you want to see them even nudge up, the number of threes that they're actually taking. Okay, I get that, but it's more so about, yes, we don't want this team during the stretch. They're still dead last in above the break 3-point attempt rate, 29th in overall 3-point attempt rate. You want to see them take more threes, but just having the floor more open makes the job easier on him. I also think for the way it seems like they want to play, we've seen a little bit more synergy between Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson, and the minutes with both of them are getting better, but they operate so separately, even when they're together at times, that if you're not going to involve them in a ton of the same actions, and it's good that they got Zion out of the post and he's doing more point guard things, but if they're going to do so many things separately, the floor needs to be open to accommodate that. And I don't know what's a mystery with this team. I do believe, just because we haven't seen Trey Murphy, CJ McCollum was having a heck of a year before he went down for the most part. Part of me believes that the tools are in place, even when looking at Jordan Hawkins and Matt Ryan, that you could finagle enough of these lineups to say, hey, the floor will be open. The defense, they can still defend really tough. Willie Green's been really great for the most part since he's come at coaching that end of the floor. That could be, that could be something that's going to be fine in lineups where we actually do carve out enough spacing. But there's a chance that this team does need to make a move, more so to your point. And I just don't know if they have the gall or the conviction in this core right now to make that move in the middle of the season, or they might just be in that constant state of wait. Whereas, well, we got to wait for, not that Larry Nance Jr. is down again, but like Brandon Ingram is now missing time, that CJ and Trey Murphy are back, or something along those lines.
We're going to deviate from, the numbers based stuff we've been talking about, but just like, do you like the combination of Ingram and Zion? Like, is that a 1-2 that makes sense to you?
Man, no, look,
it doesn't. You're right.
It doesn't make sense, but it can be done. I don't know if the Pelicans have optimized it, whether you're going to use them, if it's a matter of using them more together. And I'd love to see the data on just like the 2-man game that they've run over this 9-game stretch. But even if you're going to try and use them independent of one another, I'm talking in the same lineup. Mm-hmm. It's like you need to figure out a way to open the floor then, because like Zion is a non-shooter at this point, and defenses are just going to, they guard Brandon Ingram differently. They even guard CJ McCollum differently when he's away from the ball, because he's not known as this motion, high volume 3-point shooter, even though he did up his 3-point volume this year. I don't know if but I look at them and it's just, I want to see their best players together. And they've done creative stuff where it's okay. And the lineups that we were talking about that don't have Zion or Ingram, and it has one of them where it's, let's put the ball in Herb Jones's hands. So that kind of eradicates one of the non-shooting problems. There's just so many different plays that they could make. I need to see Trey Murphy back, because it feels like that could open up everything.
Yeah, I agree. That is that's been, some version of this, although it's usually been, well, one or the other of Ingram or Zion or both are not healthy. And so like, we'd have this, not saying you and I, but we probably have at some point, people would have this conversation of like, well, does the fit really make sense with Zion and Ingram? And probably the fairest answer was always like, I don't know. We haven't really seen enough yet. And and if they've been healthy, we haven't seen enough now we're talking about Trey Murphy. Like, Trey Murphy's going to, I'm not saying you're saying this, but the idea is Trey Murphy unlocks the maximum potential of these two guys, and they are hard to sort of scheme and fit around, but it's doable. And someone like Murphy really matters. So like, it does feel like we're just constantly waiting for one reason or another to like get a fair sample to evaluate these two guys. And like, I just can't get past the feeling that like, yeah, there's definitely ways to make it better, but just on a fundamental level, like, if you're going through the best duos in the league and you care at all about how they complement each other, like this one's pretty far towards the bottom of the list in terms of like complementary skills. Cause they just like, I don't know what you would say they are. Like Ingram can be a good 3-point shooter, but he doesn't really want to be a catch and shoot 3-point player. And he can do so much other stuff that doesn't really make sense to use him that way. So I don't know. I got a couple other ones. I was going to do the Lakers, but it's almost like do we need to do the Lakers? They've had so many rotation guys hurt, and
I will say with the Lakers, I was wrong. I thought their offense was going to be a lot better this year, and it just haven't been. They're so reliant on LeBron James that it's not even funny. And you start to toggle with lineups when he's not on the court, and they become disastrous. The fact they had to move Austin Reeves, who's been playing better since he moved to the bench, feels less than ideal, because now they're kind of searching for that. Like, it's another guy that they need to figure out how to round out their best lineups with. But you are right. They haven't been healthy. And so it's tough to get kind of a hold on them. I think I don't know that I never had them in my inner circle of contenders. No. But if you did, it's probably time to rethink that. And I'd be curious. Zach Lowe had talked to Dave McMenamin about this. How many games were they going to give it before they're like, okay, we're going to dangle our non-Reeves assets to see what we can get in here? I don't know what one first-round pick and some of the money that you can offer ultimately does for you. Again, though, because Gabe Vincent has missed time, because Rui Hachimura has missed time, Jared Vanderbilt hasn't played this season, although he was played off the floor in the playoffs. And so it's, if you're going to use that sort of as the excuse here, we can't help now saying like, oh, will Anthony Davis's perimeter game come back? It existed for like a season and a half.
Yeah.
This is just the normal. So their offense is concerning, and they're a team that needs to figure out either one. They need to figure out how to open up the floor in general. That's a fact when you're looking at them. They are currently 27th in 3-point attempt rate on the year, and they are 26th in 3-point percentage. Like, I don't look at anyone and say, oh, when they come back, they'll bring that up. Like Gabe Vincent, you can't, like, he's going to rely on that. They need to do something about that. I just don't know that they have the assets necessary to get, if there are players who other teams are interested in, the Lakers are not going to outbid them.
No, I think, the reason I hesitated was like a lot of the analysis for me on the Lakers, not a lot, but one key part of it was going to be similar to the Pelicans, which is to say, like, well, the disaster scenario for this team was that their two best players just couldn't stay healthy. And for the most part, LeBron and AD have been on the floor. So now you're left saying, well, I guess Gabe Vincent really is important because that's the guy that they need out there. It's just like, that's a concerning thing. That's a little bit of a red flag when the thing you were most worried about has not happened, and the Lakers are still kind of disappointing. Not, they're 10-8, like they're this time last year, they were in a lot worse shape. But just the Austin Reeves thing, I had a stat on that like blew my mind. So the minutes in which AD, LeBron, and D'Angelo Russell are on the court together, the Lakers are plus 8.4. If you add Reeves to that group, this is including all season, he's been much better. As you mentioned it, I have some of his numbers as a reserve versus a starter. But the lineups with Russell, Reeves, LeBron, and AD, which you would assume would be like, well, those guys are, they're definitely, maybe D'Lo gets, a little bit limited in the playoffs, but those units are -5. Like, they're getting outscored with those four guys on the court. And there was a decent enough sample that Reeves just got moved to the bench. Now he's been significantly better. He's 63% true shooting percentage as a reserve, which is back closer to like his ridiculous efficiency of, the last couple years, 52% as a starter, which is significant, quite a ways below league average. So one of the things we were most sure about was that Austin Reeves was one of the most, the best bargain contracts of the offseason. Right. And he's kind of playing like a $13 million player. He's kind of not playing like a guy that should be making 25 a year right now. If what he is a luxury reserve that for some reason doesn't work with the starters. Now, I'd be surprised if we had these ridiculous, starter reserve splits for Reeves all season. I would also be surprised if he continued to come off the bench just based on how good he's been, not recently talking about like last playoffs and last year. Still, that's a problem. The injuries are a problem. I don't know. Yeah, there wasn't a lot to say here other than like, it's not great if the big guns are healthy and you're kind of, hanging around 500, because they're not going to be that. Sorry, but they're not going to, Davis and LeBron are not going to play 70 games or whatever they're on pace for, high 60s even. I'll give you a choice here because we're at almost an hour already. So we can do the Toronto Raptors or we can do the Sacramento Kings. Who would you like? Who do we need to ask what's up with?
Let's do the Kings. I'm very curious as to where you're going with this.
Oh, well, the fundamental question is the defense improved enough? And so I'm going to pull up their peripherals here, or the rest of their numbers. Let's see. They are 10-6. They beat the Warriors last night. I don't know if I mentioned that. Or like,
did your mic die? It sounds like you're a million miles away from me right now.
I just don't want to talk about it. I think that's probably the reason. So they're 10-6. They have a neutral net rating. They are 14th in offense, surprisingly low. They are 19th in defense. Some would say surprisingly high. So basically, some of this will be like me rehashing my overall thoughts on the team, but like they were horrible on defense last year. So their greatest offense of all time was not good enough to hold up and offset that. They didn't make any significant improvements. Keegan Murray was playing better until he got hurt. But other than that, it's kind of like, we'll just be better because we believe we will be defensively. Like we'll have better chemistry, all this other stuff. I think there's marginal improvements. Like they're forcing a little bit more frequent turnovers from opponents. Their defensive rebound rate's better. These are not necessarily like, what you'd like are, changing the shot diet and defending the rim and stuff like that. But they are third in opponent location-based effective field goal percentage. They were 11th last year. So the process is getting better. They're 19th in deflections per 36. They were 18th last year. So their turnover rate is kind of, I don't know how much stock you want to put into it. Both Murray and Fox, their steal rates are up over 2%. Those are improvements over last season. Although kind of cutting against that, Davion Mitchell has been in and out of the rotation, and that guy is basically in the NBA because he can guard. And so if he's not doing enough to play like regular rotation minutes, because, for a minute there, Malik Monk was just the backup point guard. And really still, he's the guy that they prefer to play over Davion Mitchell. Just throwing some stuff out there to say that I think there's marginal improvement defensively for the Kings. I have no questions about their offense. I think the fact that they're 14th right now is like, there's no chance that holds. But I'm not convinced that like, especially if we assume that there will be injuries this year for them, which there already have, and there weren't last year, that this defense is improved enough or even really at all to make a difference. So do you have the same concerns? You've always been a little less worried about the Kings than I have, I think, but I'm curious where you are with how they've played so far this year. If you see more positive signs defensively than I do, or if you see personnel that, stand to make a difference on that end that I don't.
I think when you're talking personnel specific, if you're looking for this super meaningful change that's going to turn them into a sustainably top 10 defense, that player's not currently on the roster. That's pretty clear. But like Sasha Vezenkov has held up better defensively from the moments I've watched him, and he was really good defensively against the Warriors the other night.
I mean, he can't really move, but he does get to where he ought to be, and he's really smart. So yeah, I think I agree. He's been better than I would have expected. And
look, we've only seen what would be their top unit this year for 260 possessions because Fox has missed time, Murray has missed time. The defensive rating of that unit is 107.7, which is in the 65th percentile. And when you dig into, okay, well, how is that happening? They're not getting super lucky when it comes to opponent 3-point shooting or shooting at the rim. With that unit on the court, opponents are shooting 76.3% at the rim, 14th percentile. I'd argue that number is going to come down. And opponents are also, what's that?
Will it? I don't know.
And then opponents are shooting 38% from three. This is what the Kings do, and I think the improvement is more stark than ever. They keep teams out of transition, and it's not just a matter of scoring and getting their defense set. Like, they get back, and they eliminate all second chance opportunities, basically, for other teams. I do think it's kind of a different animal when you get to the playoffs and that you're going to face teams that are more equipped to hunt mismatches or go after Sabonis and put him in very uncomfortable situations. I do not think that means Sabonis is a terrible player. Like a lot of people think the Kings should trade him. I want to know, so many players are imperfect that we get caught up. Can you be the best player in a championship team? Shut the fuck up. Like, they have De'Aaron Fox. They might have, like, he could be the best player in a championship. The way he's been defending better. Murray's been defending better. Malik Monk has been defending better. There's enough incremental improvement for me to say this team is as good or better than last year. And I think it still comes down to, can they get some extra wing defense? rim protection would be nice, but just you're going to play Sabonis heavy minutes. Can you get sort of a combo wing, a 3-4, a different type of 3-4 guy in here to pair with Keegan Murray in place of some of the Harrison Barnes defensive minutes? And that's why I was just sort of surprised that you picked them. Just given some of the injuries they've dealt with, I kind of assumed they're where they should be. You look at the vitals and the record, and maybe you would like to see them be a little bit higher. And I get that, but they're 5th in the West. And that's like, given how much time De'Aaron Fox missed, I think that's an absolute win for them. So I'm neither worried nor surprised by anything from them this year.
Yeah, I guess like that's why I struggled to brand this, because it's kind of like, I just want to know what's up with them. What's going on? You know, I want to get a feel for them. I once said I didn't mention, I don't know if you kind of touched on this a little bit, but they're 3rd in opponent rim attempt frequency, which is a huge step up from last year when they were 15th. So like that, I think if you're looking for the biggest differences, I cited some other marginal improvements, but to be top 5 after being like middling at just, because when opponents get to the rim against Sacramento, they finish like that. That's just because of the personnel. That's just what's going to happen. So limiting rim frequency for them is absolutely critical. I think maybe that does point to, you know, they're a little more disruptive on the perimeter. Some of their guys like Fox have just been.
I was about to say, yeah, like Keegan Murray and Fox. I mean, even Keegan Murray specifically feels like they help with the containment.
And
like
they have to, like that's a must, because you know, guys get downhill against Sabonis. He's just not a vertical rim protector. So you just have to keep guys out of the lower paint. So that has been a big difference. And so that's a positive, like what's up with the Kings angle, I suppose. Unfair hypothetical. So let's say the Kings end up with, you know, it's April and the Kings are 2nd. Let's just give them 2nd in offense, because maybe Indiana holds this up all year. And they're like 12th in defense, which would be an improvement. Would that?
Yeah.
No, I mean, an improvement over where they are now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it would be right. Would we still just have the same conversation about like, yeah, that's all great, but they're just solvable in the playoffs because of Sabonis, because of whoever else? Like, or would you feel, you know what I mean? I think they're a team that the numbers can be what they are, but until they show in a playoff series that some of the weaknesses we all understand them to have, just they can overcome those, it's going to be hard to be confident that, you know, the numbers say they're much better on defense in the regular season. Do you think you'll feel confident then, or will it just still be a prove it situation?
It'll still be a prove it situation for me, unless it's always going to be a prove it situation, because we need to see them do it. They didn't win a playoff series last year. They took the Warriors to the end, but they didn't win. If they make a move though, like this is a team I'm not picking. Would I be flabbergasted if you said, oh, the Kings came out of the West? No, I wouldn't, but I'd be more shocked if you said that about them than if you said it about, okay, the Nuggets, the Suns,
sure.
Like some of the other, I mean, frankly, if you told me, I think the Timberwolves and the Pelicans, I'd be more confident in coming out of the West at this point, because I trust that those teams have the higher gear defensively. It changes for the Kings a little bit if they make a move, but you need to make that move. And does the right player become available? I'm not sure if someone like a Dorian Finney-Smith would make enough of a difference from. I just don't think OG Anunoby is going to become available. We can talk about him until forever. I just don't think Toronto ends up moving him this season. That would just be such a wild thing to for them to do. Like, oh, here's half a year before you pay him. What is the value you even get for him in that circumstance? So I don't, you know, you go through the list and it's like, there might be some guys that come available as the season goes on, but can they get that? Again, it just comes to like upgrading their combo wing defense. And they have the assets like that to make a deal happen. It's just, who is the right player for that? And you're not giving up everything for a Dorian Finney-Smith, but are you making that move? Do you think he is someone who makes enough of a difference? And quite frankly, I honestly don't know. Like, that would be a genuine question.
Yeah. I mean, I think really, like, you know, we get caught up talking about, you know, obviously Anunoby is the name that comes up the most, and guys, you know, quote unquote, like that Dorian Finney-Smith, like these big wings. Like, what if they just had like, and I'm just spitballing, so I don't have we can come up with one, I'm sure, like a switchable big that could block a shot. Like, is there, like, where's that?
So name me the most, right. I guess, like, one, if you're going to go get that big, and let's say they do exist in the realm of gettable, let's say Nick Claxton.
Oh
So
God.
you're never going to play him with Sabonis. So
Right.
what's the
You can't
point?
do it. That's why this team is so confounding sometimes, because of the Sabonis piece of it. It's so hard to like give them what they need without getting Sabonis out of the picture. And then if you remove Sabonis from this team, they're just not even close to the same team anymore. Their offense is completely different. It's way worse. So I just like, maybe that's the what's up with the Kings. Like, how do you really get them what they need without blowing it up?
Do you know a name that kind of springs to mind? And this is, he might be engaging in some fluky 3-point shooting, especially because this is a team that notoriously has these guys shoot better from 3 whenever they get there. Matisse Thybulle on this team.
Oh, yeah.
He's hitting like 37% of his threes or whatever, and he's been defending his butt off. Even Jeremy Grant been playing, I didn't like what I was seeing a lot early on. He looks a lot better now. Like that's a lot of money for Jeremy Grant. I want to make that clear, but those are guys. Jeremy Grant and Keegan Murray can play together. I wouldn't, if you said here's Sabonis, Grant, and Murray, I'm not worried about it.
No, can we get the Jeremy Grant that played center for the Thunder like for a little bit years ago? That would be cool. And what about if we got, can we get 2021 Maxi Kleber?
What's that?
Maxi Kleber from like 3 years ago.
What? Man,
he would fit with Sabonis.
The injuries with Maxi Kleber.
I know.
No.
How about
the idea of Zeke Naji?
Yeah. I love listen, if we love one thing, it's the idea of Zeke Naji. We love the concept of Zeke Naji.
You know who would actually be really good for this team? I just wouldn't trust the spacing necessarily. And he's going towards free agency, and they've already paid a lot of not wings. Kyle Anderson.
Yeah.
You're the Wolves. You can't afford to give him up right now, but that would be a name. First of all, Naz Reid would be perfect for this team, but they sure as hell can't move him.
Now I'm obsessed with who, like, what if like a Horford type? Because you can play Horford with another big and he'll survive on switches. Or like, again, we're gonna have to go back to like several years ago.
About Marvin Bagley.
What about Marvin Bagley's actually been probably the second best big in Detroit after I guess Stewart's there, but Duran, I mean, he's been effective because he's not shooting threes anymore. But Detroit we don't need to talk about Detroit. I think that's all I'm prepared to do. I had one other team I can't remember. Oh, it was Toronto. We don't need to talk about Toronto.
Can we talk about a couple that are springing to mind for me?
I'd love to.
Cleveland.
Okay.
Is there a level of worry here? They're bottom 10 in offense right now. It comes with the caveat that their 4 best players, and I mean 5. Max Strus has been so important, so let's just include Max Strus in this. They just haven't played together because Donovan Mitchell's missed time, Darius Garland missed time, Jarrett Allen missed time. The unit, like what would be your best 5-man unit in theory, having Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, and Max Strus, has played 211 possessions together, which just isn't enough. However, the offensive rating is in the 42nd percentile, which just isn't good enough during those stretches. In the half court, the 50th percentile, still not great. I think and I'm getting to what I think the actual problem is. This team overall, when you look at their 4 best players, Mitchell, Garland, and Allen and Mobley, they're playing faster when they're together. And the Cavs are doing a better job, I think, of being opportunistic and getting out in transition. There's a different pace to the way that they are playing. They are fundamentally failing with their 3-point volume at this point. And it's when you're going to play Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen together, you're making a concession there because together those two are attempting half a 3-point attempt per game. And so now you have these other 3 players, and even Max Strus's volume per 36 minutes has come down from last season since joining the Cavaliers. You have Darius Garland is under 5 3-point attempts per 36 minutes. He's moved off the ball well. That's something I've watched ever since Justin Rowan kind of pointed it out to me. That needs to come up. And so I want to see more of this team together because when I watch it, even Evan Mobley feels like he's making more, like that he's making quicker decisions. He can still go through his lulls, but feels more confident in decisions he's making, feels more equipped to handle contact and such, to make plays in the center floor, to not have to be necessarily near the basket all the time. And then even Jarrett Allen, the dunker spot, pointed this one out. Like feels like he's more confident in making plays out of the short roll. The offense the process looks okay, but like the end result is just not good enough right now. And I don't think it's just, yes, we can wait for we can wait for the sample to tick up. And do I think that they're going to shoot 35.5% from 3 for the rest of the season? No. But like them being around the bottom 10 in 3-point attempt rate, like you just can't do that, especially when they're just really relying on getting to the basket. They're third in rim frequency. They don't take a ton of mid-range jumpers relative to other teams right now. And I'm interested to see how this all comes together if we ever get an extended stretch of, all 5 of these players are available together. I even like the look. George Niang is not the guy that you think does this, but like the Cavs just feel like they play a lot faster when he's on the court. So there are different dimensions to their offense, but the floor is not, even with Max Strus doing the things he does, it feels like the Cavs are either not opening the floor enough when they're watching them, or they're not capitalizing on some of the personnel that they can run out, or the different combinations that they can really test. And I don't know how much of that is a function of, well, this is just who's available, or you look at their best players and it's, well, a lot of them don't want to be high volume 3-point. Like Donovan Mitchell does a lot of the stuff he does out of necessity, and you have Max Strus. You can't have Jarrett Allen or Evan Mobley be your quote unquote floor spacers. Caris LeVert has never wanted to be a super high volume guy from behind the arc. It feels like Darius Garland has kind of pushed back against that. Even like, Donovan Mitchell is, I would say, is the only player on this team taking enough 3-point attempts on a per minute basis. And even 8.5 per 36, I'm just like, that should be like closer to 10. And so is it just the 3-point shooting, or does it come back to you are kind of battling against the current just by having Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen on the court together? And then in those minutes, one of the issues has been, yes, you're winning those minutes. It's not by this huge margin right now because the offense has been so statistically vanilla. And when you dig into it, I don't know with that lineup, okay, cool, they're shooting 72% at the rim. That might come down. Their 3-point percentage at 34.5%, 32.6 from above the break. That might come up a little bit, but there's like, that sort of balances each other out. And I just don't know what to make. Like, this is the perfect what's up team, because I just really don't know what to make of what they're doing. And then also, I can't for the life of me figure this out. Just the rebounding, the defensive rebounding with that 5-man unit on the court. Again, it's been so little. They were in the 0th percentile of defensive rebounding when those.
Yeah, it's bad overall too. Yeah, I mean, it's more concerning than
bad last season.
Yeah, no, which again, I mean, it's slightly less bad, but still bad. I guess, like, as I'm looking through some of the underlying numbers, what's kind of interesting is, like, offensively, the Cavs and the Magic have like a lot in common, which is not great. It's not where you want to be necessarily, because we just talked about some of the fundamental flaws. Like, just for example, Orlando is 17th in effective field goal percentage. The Cavs are 16th. Orlando's first in location-based effective field goal percentage. The Cavs are third. So, like, the process is good because you're getting to the rim a ton. You're not taking a lot of mid-rangers, all the stuff you want. But again, the thing that sticks out is, like, yeah, Orlando doesn't shoot threes because they don't have 3-point shooters. Cleveland has almost always 2 and often 3 in that first unit with Strus alongside Garland and Mitchell. 3 guys that, like, defenses absolutely should honor. And like you said, should absolutely be getting up like 8-10 per game. Just everybody should, especially if you got 2 guys in the front court in Allen and Mobley that aren't going to shoot. I just can't get that concerned because I believe in the talent of at least their 3, I guess, perimeter shot takers and creators in that first unit. But, like, it's not like, what were they last year on offense? Like, they weren't like this is still
they were
7th. Yeah. They were number 7 on offense last year. I guess a couple things. They're turning it over a little more this year. Like, that shaves off a touch, of your offensive rating. They're getting slightly fewer offensive rebounds.
Their free throw attempt rate dropping despite getting to the rim more.
Yep. That's down interesting. I mean, I suppose, like, if you improve the turnovers, you get a couple more offensive boards and you get to the line a little more. Maybe we're talking about a team that's like 14th in offense instead of 21st, which they are right now. And, like, even that would be kind of disappointing. So yeah, I don't get quite what's up there. I wonder if just, like, I don't know, from a like a philosophy perspective, like, offensively, they should just be prioritizing, let's get up tons of threes and just see what happens. Cause, like, although, like, why aren't they better on the offensive boards with Allen and Mobley banging around in there? If you have the floor space and those 2 guys going for, 50-50 balls on the glass, you would think you would get a lot more second chance points than this team does. Yeah, that's a good what's up. And I don't have a great answer other than to say I just think I believe in the talent there and they're going to be fine. But, like, I'm taking it on faith because the numbers are not good right now.
I'm just wondering, is it because they're not, even though I think Evan Mobley is better equipped on offense to deal with some of the things defenses are throwing at him, is it just because they don't have, these are not the most physical bigs in the world? And you're going to have, when you're looking at the other players on the court, let's look at it this way. Of the Cavs' 5 most important players, relative to their position, size, whatever you want to say it, how many of them are above average rebounders?
Oh, man. I get
maybe, and I sort of feel like it's by necessity. Like this season, it's probably Mitchell and Strus.
I mean, as above average rebounders, now I got to pull up all these guys.
This way that you would say is in actually, we could actually play a stat game with this. That would be in the 70th percentile of just rebounding.
All right, I have it here. I've got their this is defensive rebounding rates. So
who's in the how many of those 5 guys are in the 70th percentile of defensive rebounding for their position?
Strus 74th percentile, Mitchell 78th, and that is all she wrote. Jarrett Allen is in the 31st percentile at his position for defensive rebound rate.
Shout out to me for getting that right without
pretty good
numbers. What about offensive rebounding? Is it the same too, or above average? That'd be really
no.
fun.
So Strus is bad there. He's 38th percentile. Mobley is 60th percentile, which is very surprising. Allen is 75th percentile. So I guess you'd say Mobley and Allen are doing their part on the offensive boards. Like, I mean, they're not getting killed there, but nobody else is. And it's really, God, the defensive rebounding is bad too. Yeah, no,
I default to, we just need to see it a little bit longer when they're together, but Cavs fans hate this, so I feel bad talking about it. They probably already tuned out of this since this feels doom and gloomy. I said they were going to finish second in the East this year, or third, whatever it was, and they still might do it. But the more I watch it and the more I like the stuff, and yet not enough good things are happening, I'm like, I don't know if this big man thing is the way to go. At least maybe in the regular season you figure it out, but I keep thinking back to the playoffs. I'm like, I don't know.
Well, in a lot of ways, nothing has changed because this team ceiling depends entirely on Evan Mobley becoming the best player on the team. And like, as of right now, like the idea that he's better than Donovan Mitchell or close to it just is kind of ridiculous. Like, he's not. So as good a defender as he is, he's just not that guy. And so like, if he were, like, we're probably at least a couple years away from Evan Mobley, 3-point shooter, if that's ever going to happen. But if he were, like, I think you would, there's how your offense gets unstuck. If it's him spacing the floor or becoming a great role threat without Allen in the way. Like, there's a couple ways you get there, but I think still the story is very much the same, where it's just like this team goes as far as Mobley can take it, I think, on like a 5-year time horizon.
And that's also, you maybe not inadvertently, but you kind of touched upon one of the concerns where it's Cavs fans don't think that Evan Mobley is this center long-term. And I do kind of agree when you look at his build. But if he's not going to be your center, and the Cavs have won the minutes he's played without Jarrett Allen this year, very slightly. The offense, surprise, surprise, hasn't been great. Then you need a very specific 5 with him. Yeah. And that, again, that's an obstacle to building out your team. Probably enough on the Cavs, though. So before we get into the guess a player, stat padding, I'll throw it at this as a way to talk about maybe 2 teams or a macro topic. Are we officially seeing a changing of the guard I'll focus on the West because we already did the Orlando Magic. Are the Minnesota Timberwolves just the best team in the Western Conference? Are the Oklahoma City Thunder, is the expectation just that they are one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the Western Conference? Is this where we're at? Because I think a lot of people are just chalking up, the Warriors will come on, the Clippers will come on, the Lakers will continue to come on. And I'm just like, maybe some of those teams, I mean, the Clippers already made their moves. I look at, and who of those 2 teams are you more this season? Long term, I think we all know who we believe in more, but like, what is the bigger threat? It feels like, to me, I will say, based off what Minnesota is able to do defensively, there are still things I would like to see from them for their offense to open up. They're a team that, they're 5th in 3-point percentage right now. I would like to see them take more threes. They are 25th in non-corner 3-point attempt rate, and they're still in the bottom 10 of 3-point attempt rate overall. They also just, and this is a function of the lineups they play. I don't know that you can get around it. They don't get to the rim a ton when you're looking at the frequency. And that's a marginal concern when you look at how basically everyone is defending. That's Karl-Anthony Towns included at this point. I would say, what are their top 7 players this year? No, top 8 players have all been decidedly above average defenders. You can find possessions where Rudy Gobert is covering like 8 different things. He's just moving so much better. Anthony Edwards is so much more locked in. Naz Reid, I think there's so many good candidates right now. I think he's my 6th man of the year right now. I don't know if that's we're talking about the Wolves, so it must be Naz Reid. I don't know if that's sort of like that's at play right now, but you dig into their big man combinations. Almost no matter who they're rolling out right now, they're killing it. There's only like one combination that's not great. I'm watching them, and I'm watching what the Thunder are doing, and the Giddey performance lately. I don't know how much of it has to do with what's going on off the court, but he's been up and down all year since before the allegations even sort of resurfaced. He was down for a good part of that stretch. But I'm looking at these two teams, and I'm just like, I feel like we're watching a changing tide.
So I think, obviously Denver,
they're not going. They're not going. Sorry,
but to your point, I think Minnesota right now, I would view Minnesota as like they're just the second best team in the conference, just like with no qualifiers. And the record says it. The record says they're better than that, but we're just gonna grant Denver the top spot there, and then like after that, like you're not gonna take Phoenix with their injury concerns and like a bunch of minimum guys behind KD and Booker. You're not gonna take the Warriors that just are terrible now and you're never gonna win another game in the existence of the franchise. The Clippers, no. So yeah, the thing with Minnesota, you mentioned Gobert, like who is the better defensive player of the year pick right now today than Gobert? Like, I don't think there is one, because this defense is really good. And he's got the statistical case. And just anecdotally, he made Chet Holmgren in that game against the Thunder just not shoot the ball several times because he was quick enough. It was not last year, and mobile enough to get out and at least dissuade him from taking a 3. I think Holmgren should just shoot more 3s. He was a little hesitant, and generally I think should just pretend as if when the ball comes to him, he should just shoot it if he's open, because he's going to pull the center out like much more effectively if he does that. But he sort of talked Holmgren out of shooting a bunch of 3s. The number of shots that Thunder like penetrators just did not take because Gobert was around, it was like vintage Jazz Gobert. So like that's a game. But we've got a full, 17 games. The Wolves have the best defense in the league. Gobert is their best defensive player, but they also like don't play bad ones, like you said. So like, I guess the question would be, what does Minnesota not have that you would like to have on a team you view as a threat to win the conference, win a bunch of playoff series? Like what is it that they're missing? Because I struggle to come up with like a clear deficiency.
I think a motion shooter, and then I do think this is an overall team weakness. Like they've turned the ball over a lot.
They do turn it over, but don't you? I still trust Mike Conley as like just the ultimate game manager point guard that actually knows how to play with Gobert. Like, yeah, the turnovers are up. That's the thing that jumps out in their 4 factors. They're 26th in turnover percentage. Like, but Jesus
are they?
Christ,
Okay.
Like, how much better are they if they just take care of the ball? Like Edwards gets a little wild. Gobert's just going to bobble passes. Sometimes that's part of it.
I think we say they need a motion shooter, but it's, hey, Karl-Anthony Towns, jack more 3s. I like what I've seen from, like, there's variance of what he's able to do off the dribble, but there just feels like, he goes through these stretches where, he did take a bunch of 3s. He's 4 or 5 one night, but then he's going 1 of 3 the next night. And even just, it feels like his volume is just dropping precipitously. And look, he's shooting a fairly good clip on Tuesday. He's hitting almost 40% of the 3s he's taking, but 5.3 3-point attempts per 36 minutes is just not enough from him. And if that's going to be what you do, I think what also is the problem is you put the ball in Mike Conley's hands more, you kind of negate, even though he can be a little bit all over the place, you negate one of your best off-ball shooting threats by having him on the ball, because defenses like Anthony Edwards feels like that quintessential, I'm convinced he would shoot 38% on pull-up triples before he would shoot 38% on catch and shoot triples. I think he's turned into quite a good shooter. But if you're going to put Mike Conley on the ball, he's shooting 44% from three this year. So you're removing one of your best off-ball threats. Yeah. I think that's the turnovers you could probably live with, just because I don't like Anthony Edwards is chaos in the best way possible. And so if that's going to be someone where those offensive moments aren't great, or if you start to mix and match with some of the bench players and you're letting a bunch of guys explore their floor game here, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, Karl-Anthony Towns, I think it's worth it. Nickeil Alexander-Walker. But I just feel like they need to bump up their 3-point volume in the half court somehow. And that could happen with Towns theoretically. Otherwise let's just throw out the name. Like, hey, they need like their Isaiah Joe. Or they're Matt Ryan. Do you think,
because as I was asking, like, what does this team not have? It's not like a player deficiency necessarily, but like, so Conley's the best passer on the team. I think we would agree. Like, I guess maybe Kyle Anderson, you'd say, is a good passer. You definitely would say Kyle Anderson's a good passer. Yeah. Is anybody else a good passer? Like, maybe that's part of it. Is like, but he's so wild. Like, he gets a little wild though, and like he gets tunnel vision-y. Is he a good passer, or is he like adequate? All I'm saying is like maybe that's part of the reason some of the like why isn't Towns getting a bunch of extra threes that we'd like him to get, is like maybe the guys just aren't quite finding him, and like it's definitely hard to play with Gobert, like because he just like the ball just clangs off his hands pretty often. So like McDaniels is not someone I'd say is a great passer. Reed is not really asked to do that. He doesn't stand out as a great passer. Alexander Walker is not a pass. Like a lot of the guys they play are just not like making the play before the play or the pass that leads to the pass. This is all just anecdotal. Like their assist to turnover is 26th in the league. So there is some statistical underpinnings for this like half baked point I'm trying to make. What's their assist percentage? 19th. So, you can have a great offense without having a high assist percentage. Just for reference, the Spurs have the highest assist rate in the league. So
it's funny we're harping on this, and they're 12th in points scored per possession. Their
offense is good. I'm just saying, like, if we're looking for issues, trouble spotting, like maybe they could use. I mean,
they're 17th in first chance offensive rating in the half court, and they're not really more efficient. I mean, they're more efficient, but they don't rank super high when it comes to putbacks or the number of plays that they're generating. Like, they're not a team that's getting a bunch of second chance opportunities. And so I want to what do the Thunder need? Like the Timberwolves feel more complete when you look at their top 8, but the Thunder feel like they have more buttons to push.
I think they need more size. Like they just, if Holmgren, you can play Holmgren and you can play Arkansas Jalen Williams, who is like just not he takes a bunch of charges, but he's not big enough to defensive rebound, protect the rim, set even as screen setters. Like I think maybe that's SGA doesn't need screens, but like that's something I think they need. The other thing, I was noticing this against the Wolves the other night, they had some lineups out there where it was, they do a lot of second unit stuff where Santa Clara Jalen Williams is the point guard, and they had him surrounded with other Jalen Williams, Giddey, I think Kenrich Williams, and like Dort. And so it's like, where is the shooting in this line? So they can put some lineups out there that just really can't space, which, they drive and kick again. And they get to the rim and they get to the foul line, and that they make it work that way. But I think that's another deficiency where some of the lineups they trot out there are both small and like not good spacers. So maybe, I don't know, let's just clone Isaiah Joe, since he's all we're talking about this whole pod. But I think those are the couple things that I would point out that the Thunder maybe could use some help with.
Yeah, and they're another one. Their 3-point attempt rate just isn't high enough. They have the second best half court offense in the league right now, but they don't spend a ton of time in the half court. Like so much of their stuff is if it's not transition, it's almost semi-transition because of how they're attacking before defenses are set. But they're another revelation. And I will say, to wrap it up, neither Minnesota nor Oklahoma City feels like a fluke at all. And if you had to pick one, I probably would just veer towards Oklahoma City, if only because I could still see them kind of experimenting their way out of it. And they're not doing that because it's not, I could say, oh, they're playing Case and Wallace, so they are experimenting. Case and Wallace is good right now. Case and Wallace is good, so they're not playing Ousmane Dieng a ton. He spent a ton of time in the G League. He played 3 games. I say a ton of time, but he was racking up DMPs with the big club, played a little bit against the Timberwolves the other night. So I think they're cognizant of, well, we need to like sort of play our best players. I guess where I go with it, and I don't mean to say let's focus strictly on the basketball, I do think the Josh Giddey performance has created certain conundrums with your best lineups, especially when you're as small as you are. Because if you're going to be that undersized, like the floor in the half court needs to be open enough. And it feels like it doesn't matter when you have J-Dub and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander who can just get through wherever. But when it feels like Josh Giddey can't operate without one or both of them on the court so that he's not even close to a primary defensive focus when he's on the ball, but how much they sag off him, whether he's on or off the ball anyway. It makes me wonder just I haven't looked at the numbers for this, and I will after I ask the question. Is it, hey, maybe is Case and Wallace like the fifth best player option? Or is it just let's throw Isaiah Joe with the Holmgren, J-Dub, SGA, Lou Dort combination, and that's your because if we're all in agreement that, okay, Shai needs to be on the court, J-Dub needs to be on the court, Chet Holmgren needs to be on the court, I would still say when you're talking about high leverage moments, I would still think Lou Dort falls into that category of needs to be on the court. And the Thunder are winning the minutes with those four on the court, plus 8.7. When Giddey's there, it's plus 6.2. When you throw in Isaiah Joe, do you know it's plus 21.8? Of
course,
their net rating. When you throw in Case and Wallace, it's plus 43.3. Now, the sample sizes on those are unbelievably small, but that's just kind of where I'm thinking. And that's not, so long as Giddey is an active member of the team, I don't see them pulling back his role because they need the information on, well, what can he be? What can we do? But that's just an obstacle where I feel like the Wolves don't necessarily have that, even if they are a team that has less optionality on their roster.
Yeah, I just think, if Giddey is not going to be a threatening catch and shoot guy, and if he's not going to be a half decent defensive player, then I'm not really sure like how much value he's adding to a team that clearly, has at least one, probably two, if you're counting Jalen Williams, and God knows what Chet Holmgren is going to be like as an on-ball guy, because already he's got more skills than someone his size should have as like a individual attacker, someone you can get the ball to on the move and he can get to the hoop. Like, so you're looking at a scenario where Giddey's maybe like the fourth best option to be on the ball. Like maybe not this year, but like you definitely want SGA to have it. I think Jalen Williams has value as an off-ball guy. So like, yeah, I guess you'd give it to Giddey over him, but like Williams is a much more threatening driver, is just a more multi-skilled offensive player. And then whatever Chet, because like, so, Giddey's still so young, but like, the Thunder are going to have to make a decision fairly soon on like, well, is he part of the core or not? It kind of like, I don't know. He'd have to get a lot better at a couple things for me to think he made sense as like, we're going to pay this guy like a starting member of the core on his next deal, because the stuff that he does, while valuable, just like it's not as valuable to this team in particular, because they have guys that need the ball and should have it and should be the guys, passing teammates open in addition to scoring. And Giddey's he's a weird fit. I mean, he's kind of a weird fit anywhere, but he's especially a weird fit on a team that has SGA and just, has defenders, needs shooters, right? We just talked about they need shooters. They need to shoot more threes. Giddey's not going to help you do that. So it's just a weird fit.
I wonder if it comes down to, everyone's going to frame it as I think a J-Dub or Josh Giddey conversation. I really just wonder long-term, is it a Lou Dort or Josh Giddey conversation when you're looking at just the complementary players and how they're going to play off your two or three best players who are, the three best players in the Thunder right now are Chet, J-Dub, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And Lou Dort, because of what he does defensively and also the fact that he's shooting 43% from deep this season, is the better complementary player. And then I still just come back to, and they have not walked back from this, they just trust J-Dub to run the non-SGA units more than Giddey. And to me, that's great for J-Dub. That's not great for the Giddey fit. And I flip-flopped on Giddey. I wasn't high on him. He impressed me last season. I recognize that he's still young and has the chance to get better, but it's just an interesting conundrum to be in. And by the way, it gets harder if you decide to get beefier, because if you want to play Chet next to another big at any point, that's just going to make, unless that big is Miles Turner or Brook Lopez, like that's going to get even harder to sandwich in the Giddey minutes.
Yeah. You're really like, I'm sure there's a turn of phrase that encapsulates what I'm trying to say better than I'm going to by speaking it out. But like, if you don't capitalize on Chet's ability to space and add another, like you're taking away from one of your own biggest strengths. If you have, if Giddey is a part of like that unit and he still can't shoot, like he's an interesting player, but I realize that I can't speak unbiasedly in an unbiased way on this topic. But like, there is no Jalen Williams versus Josh Giddey question. Like the question has been resolved, right? Like there's no one that thinks Giddey is more important long-term to the team than Williams. Like if there are, I'd love to hear the arguments, but like, I don't see it. I think the fact that the Thunder like you said, give Williams the ball when SGA is not on the floor, and they don't do that for Giddey, is like, well, the issue is settled.
And J-Dub has still played more minutes without both Shea and Giddey than Giddey has played without both Shea and J-Dub. And I think the bigger thing is you even can the minutes. So forget about J-Dub. Maybe he's on the court for these, maybe he's not. But in the non-Shea minutes, there's a pathway to, if J-Dub has the ball, Chet doesn't necessarily need to be on the floor. If Giddey has the ball or Giddey is just on the floor, Chet absolutely needs to be on the floor.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you have to make a bunch of concessions, like lineup wise, for Giddey if he's going to play a major role. So I don't know. Okay. But to circle back, I just think that means OKC has more questions than the Wolves do, at least short term. Like long term, I think we both take the Thunder. We believe in their, we want that long term stock. But if you're like, who's going to win the most playoff series this year? I think I definitely would pick Minnesota. They have more veterans. The theory of the team makes sense. I think they're both great, but I think the shorter term, and Minnesota is very much operating on a shorter term time scale. Like the Wolves are I think pretty significantly in my mind ahead of the Thunder for like how far they're going to advance this year.
We're going to do some guess of players here before we vacate the podcast. Do you want me to start or do you want to start? How do you want to do this?
Let's see. You go ahead. I got to pull up at least one and I can do that while you're talking.
Okay. So Rubik's Gal sent me a bunch. I want to make sure that I have all of them here. Okay. So, all right. Clue number 1. And shout out again to Rubik's Gal for sending these over. My entire NBA career comprised of a total of 2.5 minutes of playing time in one preseason game. I committed one shooting foul, and I made the only shot I ever attempted, a 20-foot baseline jumper.
My entire NBA career was a 2 minutes in a preseason game.
Correct.
You're not going to believe this. I don't have a guess yet.
Clue number 2. My NBA career happened because the studio wanted footage of me playing in the NBA for my upcoming show. I signed a 2-day contract with the Sixers so I could play in this preseason game, and I retired immediately after.
Oh, I was going to say Mark Curry, but that's not right. That's not a Sixers thing.
Clue 3. I was drafted 4th overall in 1972, and I had 6,831 receiving yards on 495 career receptions. Wait, what? What sport are we talking about?
So he was drafted 4th overall in 1972?
Yes.
Okay. So
Clue number 4. I'm a 4-time Pro Bowler from 1978 to 1981, and I was part of 2 of the greatest football moments of the decade. The miracle at the Met, where I caught a 46-yard Hail Mary pass one-handed on the last play of the game in 1980, and the 98-yard play from scrimmage in 1972, a record for the longest play that didn't score a touchdown.
My NFL knowledge is solid, but I'm not so hot on the 70s.
You're gonna get it after this.
God, I hope so.
5th and final clue. I host the show for 16 years, first on NBC, then on ABC. In 2013, the show was resurrected with Grant Hill and Kristen Ledlow.
This is Ahmad Rashad.
Correct.
I did not know that he got I don't know if you could even call it a cup of coffee in the NBA, but okay.
Rubik's Gal remains undefeated just with the knowledge of everything.
Encyclopedic.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have one from Rubik's Gal. Can I interject with it? It's very specifically for you.
So I'm gonna have to think back to articles I wrote in like
Well,
2011.
you know what? I feel like that's a misleading comment, but that was the genesis of this. All right. So
Thomas Satoransky.
that is someone I have not thought about for at least 18 months.
We were actually talking about him in Discord the other day, which is why I yelled.
Sato. I like the tall point guards. You know, I think that's a player type I'm into. Okay, so this is, I guess, the player again from Rubik's Gal. Shout out. But it's semicolon. What did I just say? So you're gonna have to guess this player based on their quotes only.
Holy shit! All right, let's do this.
All right. Clue 1. About his new plant-based diet, quote, steak doesn't come from anything natural.
Kyrie Irving.
God damn it. Okay, can I read the rest of the questions? The rest of them still? That's correct. Good job by you. I don't remember that quote.
I vaguely remember it. He's one of the people that was vegan and wanted you to know it.
Okay. After a 9, these are fun, so I'm gonna go through them.
Nothing against vegans, by the way. To each their own.
After a 9-point performance in a playoff game, quote, I'm an actual genius when it comes to this game. That's great. At a Thanksgiving charity meal in 2017, when asked about having a platform as an elite basketball player, quote, I see you. I see everyone. More than just your physical presence, I see your energy. I feel it. I know it.
Oh my God.
Okay.
He's such a fool.
You could try to. I'm gonna change it up a little bit. Following a loss to the Knicks, when a reporter wished him happy Thanksgiving, what did Kyrie say? It's 2 words.
I don't celebrate Thanksgiving or some shit like
Basically,
that.
He said, "Fuck Thanksgiving."
Yeah, I respect that quote.
Oh man, do you want a couple more? I just like.
So I have another one from Rubik's Gal.
Okay, no, I got a couple more Kyrie quotes. Let me see real quick. If any of them top the okay, just another like Kyrie's the type of person that would tell you over and over how he like doesn't own a TV, you know, something like that, or like I'm not on social. I mean, I like to say I'm not on social media, so I can't complain. When asked what he felt about playing in the upcoming Christmas game, quote, I don't really necessarily think of Christmas as a holiday, so I'm just happy I get to be with my family. So looking forward to opening presents and that whole thing. But I don't think of Christmas as a holiday. I just want to open presents with my family, like on a morning, like under a tree, hypothetically.
Oh, this dude, man.
Best. All right, that's it.
So I'm going to do it like this. I'm just going to keep reading through the clues, and you can interject when you have a guess. If you need clarification, just interject.
Okay.
Clue number 1. When someone came up during the 2006 draft and told me I was next to be picked, I thought he made a mistake. And then they told me that I was being picked 13th and being traded to the Bulls. And I was sure somebody was going to get fired for mistaking me for someone else.
13th, traded to the Bulls in 06.
Clue 2. When I entered the league, I was a French League All-Star, and I had a massive wingspan, a love for playing defense, and very quick hands. I'll pause anyway, because that's how it has to work.
French League All-Star. Okay, go ahead.
Clue 3. Well, I didn't crack the Bulls roster because the head coach who drafted me got fired in my sophomore season. I told you someone's going to get fired. I really came into my own at my next stop with the OKC Thunder.
Thabo Cephalosha.
Correct.
Yeah.
You got it on clue 3, and there were 7 clues. You would have gotten it on clue 7.
Isn't he Swedish or something? I didn't think he was.
Well, clue number 4 was I am fluent in multiple languages, which is partly because I grew up in Switzerland. I'm the first Swiss player to be featured in the NBA Finals.
How can I have an unrelated stat padding question? How stupid am I that all my life I have confused Sweden and Switzerland? They are not near each other, but like I just did it right now. And I sorry. I'm just going to be open about it.
Typical American, just so sheltered when it comes to geography.
Yeah, honestly. It's embarrassing.
So Rubik's Gal also had said with the answer, did you know that in Cephalosha's time with OKC, there was a total of 1 game that he did not start, and that was the first game after the trade from the Bulls? 6 seasons, 368 appearances, 367 starts for the Thunder. That's pretty wild.
That guy could guard, man. That was like he belongs on the modern Orlando Magic. He could really guard 1s and 2s and some 3s, but he couldn't shoot at all.
Random trivia question for Grant from Rubik's Gal.
Boy,
This is the first season in a decade or so that Steph Curry's plus minus stats are in the red. Ignore the tank year when he broke his hand. We've talked about that on this podcast. Can you name every Warrior, minimum 10 games played, who has a better plus minus than Steph Curry this season?
Oh, we did talk about some of this. Gosh, these have probably changed. Well, Chris Paul.
I'll bring up the current ones just to hold you accountable to them.
All right, I'm not going to look. So this is this year, guys that have a better on-off than Steph.
Yes, and we'll do it by total. So rather than like per game or whatever.
Okay. Chris Paul.
Correct. That is one of, I'll tell you how many there are. Oh my God.
Like 5 or 6 when I looked a few weeks ago or days ago.
You know, it might have doubled by then. One,
so
two,
like
three,
everyone,
4.
can I say everyone on the team?
11 players have a better plus minus than Steph on the Warriors right now.
So you're asking me to name the entire Warriors roster, basically.
Well, what? I think you'll miss. I think there's a method to this that would make you get it. I'm curious if you follow it. So you're one of one, Chris Paul.
And there's 11?
There's 11.
All right. Brandon Pajemski, that's 1.
2 of 2.
Trace Jackson Davis.
3 of 3, and you just named the top 3 players in plus minus on the Warriors.
Let's see. I'd like to get them in order if I could. That would be impressive.
Well, you're already out of order, so don't worry about it.
Oh, okay.
You went 1, 3, 2.
Dario Saric.
That's 4, 4, and he's 4th.
Moses Moody.
You're 5 of 5. He's 6th. He's 7th, actually. Sorry.
Jonathan Kuminga.
You're 6 of 6, and he is 6th.
GP2.
7 of 7, and he is 5th. So you have the top 7 guys in plus minus.
I mean, like, there's only, so really the question should be who is in the negative, or who's worse than him. And I'm going to say Wiggins is worse.
Okay, that's congratulations to you. That's not this game.
Oh man, then I'm just naming Warriors. I can just keep firing them off. I think I should be able to name the whole roster.
You're not going to.
I'm not going to?
Just because of, I mean, try it. Go ahead.
Lester Quinones.
Okay, 8 of 8.
Guy Santos.
9 of 9.
What do you want to do here? Jerome Robinson.
10 of 10. One more.
Ooh. So which starter is it? I've already like lost the thread of who so we got left over. We have, these are not my guesses. Clay, Wiggins, Draymond, Looney. Am I forgetting somebody? Corey Joseph. Yeah. Did I say Corey Joseph?
You did.
Okay. I'll say Draymond.
No, it's Jerome Robinson.
I said Jerome Robinson.
Net even.
I said Jerome Robinson.
4.7 minutes. You did?
Yeah.
Oh, then you didn't say Corey Joseph.
Oh, okay.
You got
I would have said Corey Joseph.
You got him.
You're basically like,
so the system was who hasn't spent, aside from Paul, a lot of time in the starting 5.
Yeah. God, what an upside down year. Horrible. You
didn't
think I was going to get Guy Santos and Lester Quinones, did you?
Once you got those two, I was like, oh, it's over. He's gonna get it.
I don't know much. I don't know the difference between Switzerland and Sweden, but I know the Warriors 2-way players and that they've been better than Steph on off.
Did you have any guess of players for me left? Because I have a couple left for you.
I don't have no, I don't.
All right. So, question for Grant: why do you hate Madonna?
Why do I hate Madonna? Do I hate Madonna? Madonna's overrated, I guess. I don't know.
My ears are burning again.
Is there like an actual answer I'm supposed to arrive at, or is this just an open?
I'm just trying to see how long it'll. So let me just think of something else. Really, okay. Which movie did a better job of exploring the emotional depth of the subject matter? Lion King or Coco?
Oh well, those are the top 2. I think they were in the finals of a Disney bracket. Which emotion? What are you trying to get me to say?
Which movie did a better job of encapsulating the emotional depth of the subject matter?
Of the subject matter. I feel like you're speaking to me in a code that I don't understand.
Okay, why did Disney during The Lion King not do a better job of addressing how Mufasa was a polygamist.
Why did it not do a better job? I don't know. This is so confusing.
Okay, I'm going to tell you why this is dumb.
Yeah, here's why that's dumb. Is that what I'm supposed to say?
I listened to an episode of why that's dumb. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry you had to do that.
I enjoyed it. And I've never seen Coco, but now I want to see Coco. You were shitting all over Madonna though in that episode. Was I? Yeah, yes.
Yeah, I mean, you should know from this pod that I don't remember most of what I say, but shitting on Madonna is definitely something I would have done. I can't remember why.
You were just like, she feels overrated was basically your take.
Also, I did remember why. She feels overrated.
So I have two actual questions I just want to see if you could catch on to, so not until I said the name of it did you realize it?
No, I mean, I understand. This was so off base that I figured that was what we were talking about, but I didn't know what the expected answer was supposed to be.
Well, I have two questions for you actually.
Okay.
One comes from, this is guess a player from Rome 8180.
Okay.
Clue number one, I was drafted in the lottery in the 2002 draft after my junior year in college. I don't think you're going to get it off that. Two, I was drafted by a Western Conference team where I remained for my first 5 seasons before being traded to the Eastern Conference. From then on, I only played for teams in the Eastern Conference.
Okay, I'm not going to help me there.
Clue 3, I was a solid defender, but I was best known for my three-point shooting over 30% on decent volume for 7 straight seasons in the second half of my career.
Shooting what percent?
38%.
And went from west to east?
Yeah.
02. Is this Mike Dunleavy?
Mike Dunleavy Jr., correct. Yeah. Got it. He gave 8 clues, and you got it in 3. That's good shit. You would have gotten it, I think, by clue 5. I am the son of a player / coach / GM.
That is so weird that was the player in a guess a player, and I have Mike Dunleavy in a stat padding question for you. That's crazy.
Okay, final one from BRich_ATX.
Okay,
clue number 1.
Before you start, let me just try to get into the mind of a psychopath. Okay, now I'm ready. Go ahead.
Clue 1. I started my professional career in Italy in 2001 at age 17. Drafted in the late first round in 2004, I went on to set that franchise's single season record for best three-point field goal percentage of 43.7% in the 07-08 season.
Italy? Is this Andres Nocioni?
No, I like that guess though. Clue 2. I was arguably instrumental to helping that franchise win 2 titles in 6 seasons before being traded to the Nets during the 2010-2011 season. Okay, hold on. You got to read me the first 2 again because I'm annoyed that I don't have this yet. So reread the 2 clues I just read. So he played in Italy as a 17-year-old professionally. I started my professional career in Italy in 2001 at age 17. I was drafted late in the first round in 2004. I went on to set the franchise that drafted me's single season record for best three-point field goal percentage, 43.7, during the 07-08 season. That was clue number 1. Okay, thank you. I was arguably instrumental to helping that franchise win 2 titles in 6 seasons before being traded to the Nets during the 2010-2011 season. God, 2 titles in 6 seasons should just give it dead away. In like the okay, go ahead. In July 2011, this is clue 3, I moved back to Europe, playing 2 seasons in Turkey. I then signed on a 10-day with the Clippers in 2014. After, unsurprisingly, failing to make an impact, I retreated back to Europe, bouncing around in Italy, Spain, and Turkey over the course of 1 season. I then made my triumphant return to the NBA, joining the Knicks for the 2015, 2016, and 2016-2017 seasons, where I started 29 games and had an atrocious net rating. Is this Pablo Prigioni? No! Shame on you. Why shame on me. He's Italian. He was on the Knicks around that time. Clue 4. Never across 10 seasons in the NBA did I average even 10 points per game for a season. I never averaged 4 rebounds, nor 3 assists. My career effective field goal percentage was 48.7. And this guy set a franchise record for 3-point percentage in 07-08. Oh my God. And won 2 titles with that team.
I should just know it from the titles. Like, who the hell was winning titles in the mid-aughts?
I think you'll get it on this fifth and final clue.
I hope so.
Clue 5 and the final one. I was better known for wearing an ugly hairband as well as dating and getting engaged to Maria Sharapova in 2011. While there's no evidence of this, I was likely the cause of her multiple anti-doping violations over.
This is Marko Jaric, right?
This is absolutely not Marko Jaric.
Wait, Marko Jaric, who did he's got a supermodel girlfriend. Maria Sharapova. She's not a supermodel, that's a tennis player. Italian. I don't think I know who this is. Can you tell me the team he won the titles with, or is that too easy?
I think it'll be too easy, but I will tell you rather than giving you the I should give you clues. Let me see if I can get so I'm talking as the player.
Okay.
I always looked like I purposely had 2-day stubble on my face.
Oh, I know. God damn it. This is Sasha Vujacic.
Nice job. You're welcome. It was my clue that did it, right?
Well, I should have got there. I really should have got there.
Yeah, the last clue was a dead giveaway, I thought.
The Sharapova thing? Yeah, I picked the wrong, like, how did he pull that? I picked the wrong guy for that. Okay. What's the name of Marko Jaric's maybe wife? It's like it's a supermodel for sure. It's not like, it might be like Adriana Lima or like something like that. I don't know. Good thing we don't have the internet. Well, I have some stat padding for you.
All right. Well, hit me with the stat padding stuff.
You want some of that? By the way, Adriana Lima is Marko Jaric's wife. That is correct. They're still nope. They only made it 5 years. They ended in 2016. I don't believe in love anymore.
R.I.P. to that relationship.
Too bad. All right, quick fire, Dan. Who had more and ones in 22-23? This is last year. Joel Embiid or Nikola Jokic?
Nikola Jokic.
That is incorrect. Joel Embiid had 11 more. John Morant or De'Aaron Fox?
De'Aaron Fox.
Incorrect. John Morant had it. More and ones. Alperen Şengün last year or Benedict Mathurin last year?
Ooh. I'm going to say Alperen Şengün.
Over 3. Mathurin had 10 more. Jimmy Butler or Julius Randle? More and ones last year.
Julius Randle.
Correct. Smoked him by 20. Luka Doncic or Giannis?
Ooh, Giannis.
Giannis by a lot. Had 98 to Luka's 74.
Okay, so we'll continue all of this on the next pod that will go up on Monday. Lots more stat padding stuff to get to. Do you want to take us out of here in the meantime?
Happy to. Thank you, everyone that made it through this episode with us. I hope you're looking forward to the next one as much as we are. More stat padding, all that good stuff. As Dan mentioned at the top, and as you should know by now, we shouldn't have to keep doing this, but it's like a ritual. Rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Leave us, positive reviews, 5 stars, Apple, Spotify, wherever. I don't know what else is out there. However you're listening to this, or if you're watching it on YouTube, make sure that you are in the loop by subscribing, by following on the socials as well at HardwoodKnocks on Twitter and TikTok, at Hardwood_Knocks on Instagram. If you're interested in merch or in how to join our Discord, the links for that are in the YouTube and podcast descriptions. I think I have covered it, other than telling you that you need to remind your friends, remind your enemies to get on board, to participate. Clearly, we're using a lot of suggestions from listeners from Discord, so that's a cool thing. You can get your questions or try to stump us as often as you'd like. We've gotten some good content that way. So, as always, thanks again. We close with a shout out to the one and only Frank Ntilikina and an apology to Jarrett Allen.